In the Phenomenology of Spirit, Hegel developed an epistemology in which he examines the various manifestations of human consciousness. In this process of consciousness, the work itself, its object, and its instrument are themselves forms of consciousness. At the end of this process emerges a consciousness for which the dualism between nature and spirit has disappeared. Welcome to my channel, The Realm in Thinking. I'm glad you tuned in again. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, feel free to click on subscribe. In this video, I would like to go through the approach of the Phenomenology of Spirit as formulated by Hegel in its preface. In this work, Hegel pursues a very specific epistemology, the logic of spiritual labor processes. These spiritual labor processes describe the laws governing the production of education and science. This epistemology appears to Hegel as the path through which knowledge attains its truth. The Phenomenology of Spirit is very difficult to understand because it is one of Hegel's earliest works and still in a state of methodological experimentation. It serves as the testing ground for his systematic and objective idealist philosophy. The chapters of the Phenomenology are later addressed in Hegel's Encyclopedia. The Phenomenology investigates human consciousness and its manifestations. This consciousness embarks on a path from the natural, simple consciousness as it is given to everyone initially, to true knowledge. For consciousness, this path is one of despair, as it realizes that its prior knowledge, its previous conceptions of itself and the world, is incomplete or false. The natural consciousness often merely appears to have found truth, only to realize that this is not the case. Through constant self-examination and the abandonment of outdated notions, consciousness develops a series of ideological forms, which Hegel describes as the detailed history of the education of consciousness itself towards science. This spiritual labor process unfolds within consciousness, making it a process of consciousness itself. The moments of this labor, its instrument, its object, and its product, are themselves forms of consciousness. The movement of these forms is driven by contradiction within consciousness, by its dual character. Consciousness is on the one hand consciousness of an object and on the other hand self-consciousness. It knows what it holds as true, but also knows that it is the one holding this knowledge. This distinction between consciousness and self-consciousness leads to their mutual transformation as consciousness examines itself. It alters both itself and its object. The object is always shaped by how consciousness perceives it. As consciousness changes its understanding, its knowledge of the object also changes. An illustrative example from the first chapter on sense certainty demonstrates this dialectic in the here and now. Immediate consciousness encounters an object directly, such as the sensation of smell, taste, or color. This constitutes a simple certainty for consciousness, making it sensory consciousness. However, this object of sensory consciousness is dialectical in itself. It is supposed to be singular, but in being singular, it is also universal. It encompasses every singular thing. Language, too, belongs to universality. Thus, sensory consciousness cannot express precisely what it means. If it attempts to articulate the exact piece of paper it has in mind, this proves impossible. Subject and object in sense certainty reveal themselves as forms of universality. That the object of labor is a universal characterizes, moreover, the particularity of every general labor process. For example, the scientific study of jellyfish does not have the individual animals themselves as its object of labor, as would be the case with jellyfish cultivation, but rather our state of knowledge concerning this domain of nature. The subsequent form of consciousness, perception, elevates sensory certainties into universalities, presenting them relationally and no longer as singularities. This dialectical movement between consciousness and self-consciousness is neither accidental nor occasional, but fundamental to all forms of consciousness. Hegel describes this as the dual character of consciousness, as two objects of consciousness: first, the in itself, that which exists independently of consciousness and is known, and second, how consciousness perceives or interprets this object. For consciousness, the second object arises through a reversal of consciousness and represents our contribution, an outcome of the movement of consciousness, which reflects on the first object, transforms it intellectually, and turns it into a product of spiritual labor. Every product of labor can immediately become an object of labor again, ensuring that no form of consciousness ever achieves a state of rest. The new consciousness, initially existing in itself, becomes for us as soon as it is reflected upon. Each new form arises through the sublation of the previous one, causing consciousness to endure the violence it inflicts upon itself.